is Katie, one of the naturalists out at Harbin Reserve. I'm gonna probably talk somewhat loud because it's really windy, which unfortunately I can't stop. So we are out here at Popp Access. So it's south of Hudson, and you take a right on Eldora and then a right on Sonetta, and it's right there. There's a sign that says Popp Access, and there's a really nice parking lot right behind me, so there'll be areas to park. And it's a wildlife area, so that means that there will not be any trails for you to hike, but there is a nice little grassy area to like come and have lunch and stuff. There's just no hiking areas. So we're out here, and actually we just got here and we found a little friend here. So I'm gonna try and show him to you without him jumping all over. So this guy here is a leopard frog. They're probably one of the most common frogs in Iowa that you'll find. And they're called leopard because they got little leopard stripes or spots all around them. They're a long-legged frog, really good at hopping, hard to catch. He was just kind of hanging out in the grass. And you'll say, well, why is he doing that? There's no water. We are very close to a creek, so he's probably out here looking for some snacks. And now is also the time where they're also looking for a boyfriend and or girlfriend to have babies with. So he was just out here hanging out, hopping around. Probably lives in the creek most of the time. There you can see his legs a little bit better.
And his toes are on the end. There's his toes.
And the reason we know he's a frog, so an amphibian, he has that wet, smooth skin because he can breathe through his skin too. They also tend to have a lot longer legs because they're really good at jumping and swimming, unlike toads, which kind of like bumble around. And they go through metamorphosis too, which is really, really cool. And we talked about that earlier in one of our online series too that you could check out on our Facebook page. There's his little leggies. It's very cool. But we'll go let him, put him back. We don't really want to touch amphibians too much because they do breathe through their skin. So if we have gross stuff on our hands that can affect them, including like hand sanitizer, it's not too great for him. So we'll go ahead and put him back.
And while Katie's putting him back, this gives us an excellent opportunity, a great segue into some of the resources that we brought with us. So some of these things, we brought our more portable items. So these are guides, like field guides, that are kind of, actually, Katie, why don't you open the frog and toad one? So these are excellent to take on a hike because they're laminated and they also are fold outs. And so you can get some really good pictures of the different things depending on what, like this one is frogs and toads, like I mentioned. So the one that we just caught or found.
It's a northern leopard frog.
The windy. The windy. So yeah, so there he is. So, or she. And so these kind of resources are excellent because they're lightweight, they're easy to pack in a bag, and they aren't super heavy. So we brought with us, let's see, we brought turtles, frogs and toads, snakes and lizards, and then we also brought mushrooms, and this is common like roadside wildflowers. So these are native grasses, so it says forbs, that just means flowers. And then grasses, of course. And then we also brought with us a pretty, this one actually is a really cool one. So this is all about tracks. So we knew that we were kind of going into an area where there'd be a creek. So we wanted to, we thought for sure we'll probably see some tracks along the way. So in case we didn't know what it was. So these are great, especially even though we have cell phones and things, there's definitely cell reception here. But you know, if you don't want to drain batteries, sometimes screens are hard to see in the, you know, in the bright light, things like that. So so these guys are really excellent for taking along with you, just because they're so light and they're so mobile.
And they can get wet, unlike your phone, which
yes.
cannot.
Yes. So, and it's, you know, if you happen to lose one of these, you're only out maybe $10, where your phone is a little bit more.
Yep.
So, actually, Katie, I'm gonna hand the camera to you, and I'm gonna go ahead and put this in my pack, and then I'll put these, slip those guys right in. So when we're out and about, Katie and I do a lot of programs or walks and talks about things like at Hartman we have trails and things like that. So like Katie mentioned, we're out in a wildlife area, so that means it is a wild area. It's not developed. So that means that you've got to bring some different gear along with you, because there are not going to be trails. So, you know, what kinds of things should we do to keep this area wild and undisturbed? So one big thing is trash. Oh my gosh, if you bring it, you can take it. So keep that in mind. Even, you know, a lot of folks try to, you know, only bring like granola bars and some, but a lot of times even at Hartman we find these wrappers all over the place, and especially in a wild area, it's just, you know, it's really disappointing to see all that. So another thing to consider is also water. Oh my gosh, you don't know how long you're gonna be out, and if for some crazy reason you get turned around and your walk ends up being longer, that way you've got water, which is super important. Luckily here in Iowa, you will probably hear or see a road, at least in our wildlife areas. So as far as getting lost, you know, you're not going to be lost in the Canadian wilderness or anything like that. So other things to think about are dressing, like what you're going to wear. So Katie and I are we're used to being outdoors in wildlife areas a lot, so we didn't bring some of the things that maybe other people would feel more comfortable with. So one thing to consider is maybe long sleeves, especially with poison ivy, and then we'll talk about nettle and stuff. Longer pants, but also things that are comfortable. You know, you don't want to be bringing a new pair of shoes you've never worn anywhere, things like that. You're gonna get some mad blisters and they're gonna hurt really bad. And then also we brought binoculars with us, because in a wildlife area your chances of seeing some really cool stuff. Birds, for example, are really high, but also you can spin them upside down and you look through like basically the wrong way through binoculars, and you can look at cool bugs on the ground too. So big and small, close and far away is what you can see. So and again, these are nice. A bag is very nice. It keeps your hands free, especially if you are with younger folk, because they like to pick things up and look at things, and so that way you'll have your hands free. They also make binocular harnesses that you can so that goes on and clips on you, and then this clips on. I forgot my binocular harness today, so otherwise I would have worn it for everyone. But we're gonna go ahead, and because we're shooting the video, we're gonna put our binoculars in my pack, and then if something happens to occur, we can whip them out pretty fast. So that's why bags are handy, useful, and something light and comfortable. Again, you don't want straps digging in as you're walking or dragging through stuff and all that. So we're gonna go ahead and maybe get started. Should we talk about maybe raspberries first?
All right, let's go see the raspberries. Lead us to the berries.
So the first thing I noticed when we got here were raspberries. Oh my gosh, are there a lot of raspberries. So actually the wind is blowing right now, and you see these plants that have like a whitish underside? That is, those are raspberries. So identifying raspberries are actually pretty easy. One, they have thorns. Two, they grow on what's called canes. So a cane, here's a raspberry, it's not like one would think a normal plant has a stem with leaves coming out the side. This has this just really kind of woody stem structure that shoots straight up. And then this is actually a new cane. This is a brand new this year cane. And I'll talk about what that means in a minute. But there's your white underside of your leaf. So very white. We've got thorns on it as well. And the leaves have a lot of veins. And what I mean about first year, second year canes. So this is considered a cane because then this is in its first year because it doesn't have any berries or flowers. Whereas if you look at some of these other ones in the back, you can see where they had flowers and they're gonna be getting ready here to produce berries. And so in the second year is when raspberry canes actually produce flowers and berries. So the, and actually right in here, you can kind of see how this cane So what happens kind of second year and years after is they'll get the tops of the first year canes really heavy and weighed down, and then they'll bend over and then actually replant itself in, like the top gets replanted in the bottom. So it's just these brambly, almost like hoop-like structures. So as you can see in this mass of raspberries, all of this looks very, actually that's a great spot right there. You can see all the hoops and they're all intertwined together. Oh, big old bumblebee. Very cool. So yeah, so you can see how they all just, it's kind of a mess. So a lot of times, you know, you hear the like raspberry or blackberry bramble. They're talking about this hot mess of a situation because it all just gets tangled. And be very careful because they do have thorns, and do not get yourself into the middle of the bramble. It is best to stay on the outside of the bramble. But I bet this area is just going to be bursting with raspberries.
Yes.
Raspberries, black raspberries are native. Sometimes they're called black caps too. They're native here to Iowa. Actually, one of my favorite summer edibles is black raspberries or black caps. So if you've never seen one in the wild, think about like the raspberries you have in the store, only instead of being that large, they're gonna be smaller and they're gonna be really dark purple, if not like a black color. So you know, they're technically purple, but to our eyes, they look like closer to the color of black. So, so yeah, those are the most common, at least, that grow here in Iowa. And like I said, it's just, it is, I feel like goes unnoticed, raspberries do in Iowa. It is such a cool, easy edible. It's super easy to identify. There's nothing else that have canes, thorns, and white undersides. All those things really help us to make an easy identification. And then of course, then combined with the berries and the colors and things like that. So, so yeah, so I guess if you directed to you folks that live in Hudson, my gosh, you've got quite the smorgasbord down here. Come and make some pie or some jam. And we're actually going to be posting a video come July about how to make wild jam out of raspberry or wild raspberries. So in our Jam with Tam series. So Tammy, one of our other naturalists, is going to be making it. So stay tuned. So if you are excited about doing something with wild raspberries, stay tuned, and you can go ahead and maybe make jam with Tam. So okay, so Katie and I are gonna move on, so bear with us. We kind of wanted to make this instead of like, you know, you not seeing us walk. There's a lot of cool things that Katie and I end up like randomly seeing, and so we want you to be part of that process with us. So we're gonna go ahead and just start walking. So if you do get a little motion sick, we're gonna try to walk a little slower, but if you do get a little woozy on the video, you know, you can always just listen to the audio too. So we're gonna go ahead and get started, and we'll also be pointing things out we see, but also random things that come to mind, huh?
Oh, we'll see lots of random things probably.
And we're so sorry, Hudson Library patrons, that we didn't get to come down. We originally had a program scheduled to do a kickoff for your summer reading program, and so this was the next best thing. So we thought that we would take you on a walk with us, even if you know, maybe you take this walk by yourselves when you come here without us. So we're gonna get started in. Lots of great prairie flowers around.
Yes.
So this right here, this is Monarda or bee balm. It's gonna get ready to flower. They have such pretty flowers.
And they're great for pollinators.
Oh my gosh. And maybe, I know they native, when they grow in prairies, they're kind of like a light purple, but you can get these for your yard. And I've got some in my yard that are dark purple, dark magenta. Those are hybrids and things. But yeah, so they're a light purple. I think they kind of look like a little firecracker that kind of comes out.
Yep.
Kind of. So yeah, really important for pollinators. Oh my gosh, sedges.
Sedges have edges.
Sedges. So this is a sedge. You're like, well, what? It just kind of looks like grass. So sedges have edges. How to tell if it's a sedge? You roll it in your fingers, and if they have triangular stems. So as Katie mentioned just a minute ago, sedges have edges. That's how they always taught us in school to identify, you know, when grasses their stems are round, so they just roll in your fingers. But sedges, man, they got edges. So, and their genus are Carex, SPP. And we've seen some sweet butterflies already.
We have that. We have to ID later because we haven't seen that before. So that's exciting.
Oh, another, if you're in wild area, nice sunny places, thistles. Oh, thistles. This is a bold thistle. We can tell it's a bold thistle because of how big the stem is.
Oh, there's a butterfly.
Sweet butterfly. Let's see if we can get to it. Oh, it's at the end of its life too. So the way I can tell that is it's very muted in color. Like it's starting to lose a lot of color, and there's damage to the wings. So I bet this lady is probably laying eggs, and then she is going to pass on. So a lot of our butterflies and moths really only live in their full last stage.
Only a week or two, maybe. They're kind of interesting that way.
Yeah. And some are not even born with, or
insides.
I shouldn't say born with, but metamorphose, you know, after they come out of their cocoon or chrysalis. They don't even have like certain organs. They don't have mouth parts because they're not gonna be eating. They're just going to find a mate and procreate and then lay eggs, and then they're gonna die. So, and then the whole cycle starts over.
Right,
again.
and those are the ones that are usually, you know, in a chrysalis for 6 months. So they get to hang out and be a chrysalis and then live for a week, and then that's it.
Oh, wait, here's a good shot. There's a good shot of your
that's a good
raspberry
one.
cane. See how it's like hanging over? And then, yeah, they're gonna come towards the sun, so that's why they're kind of sticking
all back
out the
through
top.
here.
I know,
There's
look
a
at all those
ton.
raspberries. Yeah. Oh, sad day. Garlic mustard.
Uh-oh.
Garlic mustard is a super invasive plant. So this one has already gone to flower. It has these like weird branchy deals on top, and then this is kind of, they have a little, the edge of their leaf, the edge of their leaf is kind of jagged, super invasive, and they can just take over an area. And this year has been a really good year for it. So we're battling garlic mustard all over our properties. So it looks like there's not a ton, which is, cross our fingers, good, but difficult. Oh,
Nettles.
nettles.
Want to talk about avoiding the nettles?
Oh, nettles. So
These.
there's 2 species of nettle actually that are native to Iowa. We've got what's in front of us. This is wood nettle. Wood nettle is, they've got these spade-like leaves. And then it's kind of hard. I think they look fairly generic as a plant.
Yeah, you do.
It's kind of hard because people are like, well, how do you know it's it? Well, I don't know. I just see it all the time. But you just get better at it. So one of the things you can also notice, I don't know if it'll show up in the thing, but there's little hairs on the stem and the undersides of the leaves. Those tiny, tiny hairs. So if you're walking through an area that has nettles, it's going to start to itch and burn if your skin is exposed. And wood nettle is really great at getting through thinner pants too, so keep that in mind. What happens is, the reason it causes the burn is those little hairs on its stem and its leaf kind of act like hypodermic needles. So when pressure hits it, i.e. your leg or your arm or whatever, there is acids that are in the plant, uric acid that's in the plant, and that gets injected into the top layer of your skin and then causes irritation. So it's not like poison ivy where it will cause a rash and all the things. It's gonna be a 10 to 15 minute ordeal. It's gonna get red and it's gonna get itchy. I know everyone says this, try not to itch it, because if you itch it, it will get way worse. So yeah, I know that's like the worst thing we can tell you is to not itch it, but water does help, because if you think about it, water is gonna rinse out that acid. Oh, there's the butterfly that we didn't know. There's the butterfly. Oh, well,
it's kind of far
it might
away.
be a really wide shot for you folks on the video, but
There's a butterfly over there. It's
and
gone.
we will identify it later. That is one guide I guess we didn't have, was a butterfly guide, but yeah, back to nettles. But yeah, so water helps. It rinses, dilutes that acid. But frankly, do not use your drinking water for it, because you don't want to be in a situation where you use like a quarter of your water just to get rid of the nettles, and then you end up going very thirsty. So
It goes away.
yes,
It'll
it
go
does.
away.
It may feel like you're dying, but it's okay. And there are people that have more allergy, like an actual allergy to it, to the actual acid. So if you're allergic to fire ant bites, you're not gonna have a good day with nettles. So uric acid is the same thing that's in a fire ant bite. So if you know you have an allergy to that, we don't have fire ants in Iowa, but if you've lived in other areas or visited and know you're allergic, you're not gonna have a good time with nettles. So, and again, it'll just be worse. The pain will be a little bit more than the average person. So, this is why, remember when Katie and I said long pants and stuff? This is why. So nettle gets really, really tall. And actually I did see stinging nettle. Actually that, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a plant right here. See how those leaves are not so wide and they're skinny? That's stinging nettle. So that's our other species of nettle that's here, here in Iowa. So, oh, there's some little stuff right here. Yeah, so couple different ones, but again, it's not like poison ivy. It's not going to leave a lasting thing that you have to go to the doctor for or anything like that. So.
What do you want to go look at the prairie? You want to walk through the nettles?
I'm thinking we're going to walk through the nettles and maybe walk through this dry creek bed, maybe.
All right.
And we're gonna see how well we can get through the nettles without disturbing them. It looks like maybe deer have walked through here before, or maybe another person. But I take my comment earlier back. There is plenty of garlic mustard, sadly.
Yes, so all this stuff sticking out with the weird tops, that's all garlic mustard. So if you see that, you can definitely pull it.
Oh yeah, we can walk.
Hey, Bumbles. There's a big bumblebee. Oh, he's gone.
Oh, he's in front of you.
Where is he? Oh my gosh.
There he goes.
Where? Oh, they're too fast.
They are fast.
Ooh, look at this.
Ooh, that's a good find.
Hand that to you.
Yeah, I'll hold it up.
All right, so this stuff here, I call it bed straw because back in the day, they used to stuff mattresses with it. And I don't mean like 10 years ago, I mean like back in the day.
Pioneer days.
Pioneer days. And this stuff will stick to you. So even when it's green, but it's even more fun when it's not green.
But yeah,
there you go. They're really cool.
And it's there's a lot of it here in Iowa. It's not an endangered plant. This is a fun one to engage kind of kids into nature sometimes. We use it a lot. You can kind of see the reason it sticks. You get really, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's little hooks, like hair-like hooks that are what actually attaches to you. So, but yeah, and there's two species. You might find this, like, this is the big one, and then there's a smaller species too here in Iowa. But yeah, sometimes they're also called cleavers. But yeah, bedstraw is a fun one.
Yes.
And they've got these little sticky seeds too. That's the seed at the end, this round piece. So, and again, not rare by any means. So it's a fun one that we use to engage everybody. Oh man, look at that sweet sedge. Look how big the seed head is.
Look at that sedge. Look at this. Zooming in. Look at that. That is sweet.
Yeah, look how big that. You can kind of put it next to my face. Yeah, there you go. That is a sweet. Look how
cool.
Big that seed head is. That's pretty sweet. Okay. Oh, actually, fun fact. So we're now in like a dry creek bed. And actually, if you look down, you see all these little plants that have these little toothy edges that look kind of similar to the nettle, but they're very small. So this is actually related to nettle. This is called clearweed. It doesn't have any of the uric acid in it, but it's a common one to find in these like old creek beds or near anywhere that's usually carries water. So I get that question, it's what the heck's this stuff that's always all over the ground? So that's that. You can see it kind of all over the bottom of the creek bed. So.
Oh boy.
So So we are in, obviously, eastern Iowa, which is also the eastern part of the United States as far as woodland flowers are concerned. So when you're looking up woodland flowers, you know, you can kind of get those field guides that say eastern United States. That's kind of what we are. So the flowers that we're seeing right now, this is a woodland. So that means sunlight gets into the ground, close to the ground. We're sorry, it's so windy. So that right there is called Sweet William or woodland phlox. And that is a beautiful flower. It comes in like that light purple. It can be white, it can be light pink, it even can be light yellow sometimes. That's actually, most of our wildflowers in Hartman are just about done. So this is probably the last of the woodland flowers for the most part, until we hit prairie stuff later on in the year. So, but yeah, so around us, we're in a woodland because there are trees and there's undergrowth, but you can still see plenty of light that's getting through the canopy to the bottom of the forest floor. Whereas like a forest would be completely dense and hardly any plants on the forest floor because there isn't a lot of light that gets to the bottom. So that's what makes this a woodland. And woodlands are great also because they just are able to support a huge amount of biodiversity. So biodiversity is is something that carries lots of different species. So if something is biodiverse, that means it has tons of species of both birds, insects, mammals, amphibians, reptiles, things like that. So actually, while Katie and I are standing here, there's so many bird songs happening right now.
There's lots of birds.
And that's what makes, I think, spring a great time to go out into our woodlands because all the birds are starting to date and they're starting to then lay eggs and nest. And so there's just a lot of activity.
Yes.
Spring is a fun time to be out in the woods. And it's not quite really hot yet. I know the wind's helping us today, but I mean, this week it looks like we're supposed to get a little toasty, but like yesterday it was like 70s. So it's a great time. It's comfortable to be out and about.
Look at that ant.
Oh, get my shadow out of there.
He's carrying some snacks. There he goes. Treasures?
Well,
oh,
yeah, there's a nice one over here too.
this little boop, little print.
Another one.
Oh, this is an even better one.
Big deer print.
Yep. And so this one is a lady, and lots of people say, well, how the heck can you tell if that's a lady? So female deer tend to have a wider gap in between their hooves.
The scapular.
Because they have to distribute more weight. So when they have babies, it's, you know, they don't have skinny hooves, and it's difficult to carry all that weight. So it helps with surface area when their feet get spread out.
Stabilizing the weight.
Yes, so that's how you can tell.
It's a pretty sweet print too.
Yeah. And then also, kind of, if you can see, there's this little red dot moving around. That is a mite. What kind of mite it is? No idea. But it's a mite.
And mites are arachnids.
There's a bunch. There's one right there. There's a bunch, actually. Oh, and there's another big ant. I don't know if you can see that. Actually, there's a lot of little bugs now that I'm down here.
Yeah, I can see a bunch of them.
Bugs are hard to ID because, one, they're very small. And a lot of them look similar. So if I were to see like 4 different species of ant and they all looked like this, it's hard. But some people are really, really good at it.
And if you find an insect that you would like identified, there are some different resources. Iowa State University has some really great insect resources for identifying and even learning about insects too. And you may have seen there, if you've been to like the 4-H fair or other bigger events, the insect zoo from Iowa State comes sometimes too. I know, I think last year at the 4-H.
Yes, they were there.
Yeah, I held a tarantula for the first time. So I'm pretty good with like actually normal sized Iowa spiders, but man, those bigger ones, it takes me a little bit. So I was pretty proud of myself. but yeah, and that's why they're there. They're there to help you get more comfortable with insects. So I know that insects are not everyone's cup of tea or favorite thing about the outdoors, but they are unbelievably necessary. Oh my gosh, if we don't have insects, we don't have all the other things we love about nature. So they're super important and we can't leave them out. So let's see, maybe we'll just keep walking and see what we find.
Wandering.
Yeah. I think what helps all these insects too is because this is a former creek bed. And so what Katie and I are walking on, it's a little squishy. And so there's lots of insects and things because maybe their eggs were in that water that was in here earlier and they've hatched. And a lot of insects lay their eggs in water. So that's why these little pools or these little areas that are wet, that don't stay wet all year, are super important to insect species when they're out in woodlands like this. So I know a lot of people think they just kind of look junky and kind of mosquito-y little puddles and oh, it's gross. Well, you know, they're not meant to be drinking water. It's meant to be places for things to lay eggs and grow. So yeah, this might be the kind of end of it. Ooh, that's a good find. Talk about some jewelweed. Jewelweed.
Just moving around. There we go.
So jewelweed, I know, you know, it's hard to show this on the video, but it has kind of a waxy leaf, and it's kind of has a translucent or see-through stem. And so the reason why we kind of went ooh is because jewelweed is a great in the field, maybe not antidote isn't the right word.
Remedy.
Oh, that's a nice word. For getting rid of things that itch. So that includes, like, if you've gone through the nettles already, or say you have a mosquito bite from yesterday, or it doesn't help with poison ivy. You just walk through. You have to. It only helps with poison ivy once the rash has actually appeared on your skin and it's itchy. So anything that itches, jewelweed is good for. So inside of, now I should say this one is very teeny and small. So it's better to find a larger one. But there's gonna be liquid inside of that stem. And if you break that stem open and put the liquid on, like your mosquito bite or whatever, it's gonna cause it to stop itching. So it is, sometimes jewelweed is also called touch-me-nots because they have these yellow or orange flowers that when you brush by them, or like a deer or something, it like shoots the seeds out of them. And the seeds are edible. I've read they taste like walnuts. Get excited, folks. But it's still kind of a cool fact. But jewelweed is, I think, much more useful as like a medicinal, as for itching and things like that. So they often grow in wet areas, or areas that tend to be wetter. And they usually, I'm surprised to not see more. Usually there's a bunch of them that grow together. So they share the same habitat actually with poison ivy and nettles and lots of other things, which makes it really great. So they're called jewelweed because when water is on their leaves, because they have waxy leaves, the water beads up and looks like little crystals that sit on their leaves, so it looks like a jewel. So that's why it's called jewelweed. So yeah, it's fine. Oh. Yeah, there's some more.
There's a little bug on my hand. Look at that. I don't know what that is, but it's a bug.
Sweet bug?
I blew him off. He looked suspicious.
Sweet bug, man. Also, one thing I just heard as Katie and I started venturing into this new area, I heard this chick, 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 chick. So those little calls can either be from a bird or a chipmunk, and they're alarm calls. So they're telling other birds or other animals, like, hey, something's coming through that's not usual. It's not part of our everyday. So if you start to hear those things, that's what those are. So lots of birds have alarm calls, and then chipmunks do that little chip, chip, chip when they're alerting all their fellow chipmunks and ground squirrels and things like that.
Yep.
So. Small mammals.
Prairie dogs are probably, or meerkats, if we want to get, you know, fancy, are the two that a lot of people think about, because they stand up and they, you know, look all, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then they make all those noises, and they're just alert noises.
So you'll see that Katie and I are traversing. So again, remember, we're in a wildlife area, and you know, when you think about wildlife areas, you also have to consider we have to be careful about where we walk. So Katie and I know, for example, we are in a dry creek bed right now, so we're not doing damage to a lot of the plants and other things, sensitive parts of this woodland. Also, because once you start to get to learn your plants too, there's areas that maybe it's mostly nettles or things like that, which are going to be less sensitive. Also, however, that we have to remember that, you know, if an area doesn't have trails and a whole bunch of people start to use that area, there has to be some mitigation. So otherwise there's too many people in one place going off trail, and it can ruin a place. So in a lot of Blackhawk County's wildlife areas, that's not really a concern, just because we manage probably wildlife areas maybe close to 8,000 acres. So, you know, we've got, and a lot of that is floodplain and things like that, where, you know, they're not very sensitive environments. So at least here at Popp Wildlife Area, I think you're going to be okay if you want to come out and explore and things like that. So, but it is a day use area. You can't camp out here or anything like that. So, oh, excuse me. One thing I did notice, speaking of being out in an area, walking around, look what I just found right there. You see it yet?
No, show me. Ho ho ho! Look at this fun stuff. Don't touch it. All right.
How many guesses? What does everybody think it is? I can't hear anybody.
Oh man, if only. So this is, I'm not going to touch it as it blows. That should give you a hint. So that's poison ivy. For a lot of people say leaves of 3, but then I also say, yes, many things have leaves of 3, so it's sometimes difficult to ID, especially if you're just kind of wandering through. So one of the ways is the 2 leaves on the bottom, the lower 2 leaves, they look like little mittens. They have a little boop, thumb, you can see. And then they're all attached to one stem, so they're not on 3 separate stems. They also can change colors. So in the fall, depending, this is kind of a cool poison ivy fact, depending on where you're at in the world and how your leaves change colors, so like ours change like red and yellow and brown, will determine the color of the poison ivy, so they can blend in more easy to their surroundings, which, you know, seems odd for a plant, but makes a lot of sense, right?
And that's how they've got us all.
Yes, that's how they got you. So they can grow kind of like this, just kind of, here I am, I'm poison ivy on the ground. And they also are most known for being a vine. And their vines are actually, I think they're kind of cool. And they're pretty easy to identify. Usually sometimes they can be very, very thick. Big vines, other times they can be kind of thin, but the way you can tell it's poison ivy is that it has all these little tendrils that come off of it and hang on to the tree or whatever it's climbing against. And the vine and the leaves and the stem, the whole plant, if you touch it or rub up against it, you can react to. So at this point in my life, I don't react to poison ivy, but that doesn't mean I will touch it willingly. And then other people react very badly to it. So
it is truly an allergy.
yes, it's an allergy. Oh man, what was I gonna say? Poison ivy. There was another fun fact I had. Oh, in the wintertime, you can get poison ivy in the wintertime too. even though there's no leaves out, the vines are still out. So if you rub against that on a tree or something, you can still get poison ivy.
And roots. So this happened to a couple of our wildlife guys. They were doing some like kind of like digging. I think they were putting in new lighting posts or whatever. And they were digging, and they got they had to cut all these roots in order to put a form in for concrete, and those were all poison ivy roots, and they ended up getting poison ivy. So you can get poison ivy if you're digging around. Like say you've got part of your backyard, maybe it has poison ivy and you're trying to get rid of plants, keep that in mind. You can also get it from, because it comes from the oil on the plant. And the oil spreads throughout, like Katie said, like the leaves and the stem and stuff, but also that includes the root too. So, yeah, poison ivy is, I think you and I have kind of become experts on poison ivy after all these years. And two, you know, even if you don't have an allergy to it, you can develop a really bad allergy. We've got a couple people on staff that didn't used to be allergic to it, but because they're exposed to it, they touch it all the time, you know, inadvertently, like, you know, maybe cutting trees, you know, firewood and stuff like that. They now are extremely allergic to it. So they have reactions. They have to go to the doctor each time, and it's really bad. So
it's great.
They have developed a shot for it. I hesitate. It's not a vaccine, but it basically makes this reaction. So yeah, it can be really bad, and this new shot basically minimizes the severity or how bad the reaction is. So, and that's produced by a company called New Cara, and so you can go ahead and look that up if you would like more information, if you know somebody who would benefit from that. So, yeah, poison ivy is just crazy. Oh, also, so we manage it in some of our bigger parks with goats.
Yes,
so,
goats. There's no goats here, unfortunately.
No goats. That would be sweet. But yeah, so humans or higher order primates are the only ones that have the potential for the allergy or could have an allergy. So goats, deer, your dog, like they all can eat it, rub up against it, touch it, have no problem. So it's kind of a really cool like evolutionary moment. Like how did the plant develop that defense, you know? I have a lot of questions. I don't know the answer. So if anybody, you know, watching the video, if you want to get us some answers, we would love to read stuff on that. So, because we teach about it a lot.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things that once you get good at seeing it, unfortunately, see it all over the place. So
yes. It's like when you have your brand new car and then you start seeing that same car everywhere. That's like poison ivy.
Yeah.
And we also get questions. If I walk through poison ivy, what do I do? The best thing to do is go home and wash with dish soap, like Dawn dish soap. Dawn dish soap is the best for wildlife things and for getting poison ivy off your own self. So we always tell people just do that and try not to touch your face. Yeah. You know, if you cannot touch any part of your body, your face. Don't touch your face.
Yeah, that degreaser, so in that dish soap is what's really helping you out. So I do have to say, I think we tell our interns as well as us whenever we're out, you know, as soon as we get home, you know, instead of taking a regular with body soap, we use dish soap. Just as a precaution, and it's not going to hurt you. You know, it's safe for your hands and everything. So it's one of those preventatives that's just maybe a good idea. So same goes with the clothes you're wearing. Some people are so sensitive that you can actually...
Sorry, there's also a woodpecker.
Some people are so sensitive that, like, say somebody else does your laundry, or maybe you jointly do laundry with another person, they can pick up the oils from your clothing. So if you have someone in your house like that, you know, make sure you get that in laundry and get it washed right away. Get all those oils out. So we could probably do a whole hour on poison ivy.
We could.
We're gonna keep moving. Yeah, and well, maybe hopefully we'll span up so you can start to maybe see some stuff in the trees. Like I said, we've been seeing lots of songbird, or hearing lots of songbirds.
Yes, so. They've been very active today.
As well as the semis. The semis are out today as well.
The wild semis. Yes.
This one is a common one too. I get a lot of questions because it grows everywhere. Your pasture, your yard, you know, wild areas. This is called honewort. 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 And it's just a plant. You know, people are like, oh, what else? Well, it's just a plant.
It's just a plant. Sometimes things are just things.
Yep. We know what it is because of what. Oh, no, I thought that was something exciting. It was not. It was ended.
You can go up to the prairie.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. Oh, cool tree.
Cool tree.
Cool tree moment. I mean, it's a pretty common tree, but it has a really cool texture. And this one's, like I said, fairly common. So I'll put my hand on it. You can kind of see it's kind of warty. So this is what this bark, and actually that's the word they use like in, you know, the fancy pantsy textbooks, are warty. This is a hackberry tree. So it's hard to see, but oh, actually there's a little guy right next to it. So the leaves of a hackberry are like, it looks like it has just been decimated by insects and things like this. Every hackberry that I have come across, all their leaves get this like tatty, like ratty, kind of like, they're not nice, smooth and big and pretty. Like they all do that. So I don't know if there's a certain like insect that really loves their leaves or something, but yeah, this one is an easy one to identify because it has bark like nothing else does. Lots of warty bark, and actually lots of moss. Moss.
You like moss?
Yeah.
Moss is cool.
Also, P.S. myth, moth myth busted. That was kind of hard to say. I just said moth myth.
Whoa.
Moss myth busted. That moss grows on any side of the tree, whichever one is the dampest. And usually that means like a darker, maybe like more the north or the east side of the tree. And that's why they've always say like moss grows on the other side of the tree. Not always. It kind of depends on other factors. It can sometimes be maybe the south side, but because that tree is being overshadowed by a different tree or another plant or a house or something like that. So yeah, moss myth busted.
Moss does what it wants.
Yeah, yes it does. Yes, it does. And actually right now is a great time if you got moss in your backyard. Your moss are having babies right now. It's moss baby time.
And there's some really big trees out in here too.
It's a beautiful woodland. I mean, listen to all those birds. Very cool.
Difficult to walk through. So if any of you want to be scientists in the future and work and do like field work where you track animals and stuff, you do still have to walk through all this. It's really fun and exciting though.
And if you don't end up being, you know, doing that when you grow up, this would be an excellent area to walk through probably in the early spring.
Yes, when everything's low.
Yeah, like April would have been a beautiful time to walk through here because the nettles wouldn't have been up at this point, and a lot more wildflowers too.
Yes, lots more.
And also then the same goes for like October. So areas that have lots of nettle, usually by October, all of the nettle is down. So I always think of it like when bow season starts for deer in Iowa, I always like associate that with most of the nettles are down.
Yep.
So yeah, so October's a great time, the fall, and I bet the colors in here are just spectacular.
Oh man, I bet.
Yeah.
They have lots of nice big trees.
A very cool place to come and venture. And of course, just go out and recreate in winter too. Even if there's a lot of snow, there's plenty of places that rent snowshoes. Like Hartman, we rent them. You could even rent them over a weekend and then come out and explore this area. Oh, it's a robin. Well, you know.
Well, bird.
Yeah.
The rare robin.
But yeah, this would be a beautiful place just to come and check out and explore, especially in different seasons. And I noticed this on the ground. So put that back on top. Oh well, sad day. Okay, so this is a locust. Oh, is there a better one? Oh, better one. Oh yeah,
That's better.
That's a better one. So this is a locust seed pod from a locust tree. So this is from last year's, and so it's all brittle and brown and stuff. But we'll see. I think I can feel. So inside there's these little seeds. Obviously locust seeds. That's what they're. You know, this is the vehicle for their seeds. Let's see if I can find. Oh.
There was a seed.
There was a seed. But you can see where it was. So So yeah, this is from last fall. So these are really important food source for deer, especially in the fall, and even in the winter too. So this area inside, if you pull one when it's kind of fresh off the tree, it's gonna be green and like gooey inside. Very toxic to humans, don't eat it. But they, and when they dry out, you can't, there's so much wind. There's so much wind. Well, you hear it, but you probably can't hear it on the video.
They're good for
little maracas.
all natural shakers.
Yeah. So, locusts are common trees to find in kind of low areas. So near creeks and things like that. Anywhere that's wet, they actually kind of don't mind getting their feet wet, as we put it. So also things that don't mind getting their feet wet, lots of maples through here, lots of maple trees. Hackberries also tend to be in areas that like to get their feet wet, so to speak. And because, you know, like I said, there's lots of maples, there's also, so this thing's a lot, I grew up calling them helicopters.
Yep, me too.
But the scientific term for this is a samara. And then inside of this bottom part is the seed. I'm not gonna throw it on the ground this time. So when these are green, so like I said, this one's really old. I mean, it definitely was this year's maybe, because I see a little green. But like a lot of times in storms, that's when they used to come down at my house growing up. When those little bundles like come off the trees, when they're nice and green, you can eat them. You can eat the seeds. So you pull the seeds out and you can roast them, kind of like, I think like pumpkin seeds, you know, put them in the oven and stuff. Or you can eat them raw too. They're kind of, I think they're kind of like the inside of sunflower seeds a little bit. But yeah, so very good edible, especially, you know, if you've got one in your yard, you're gonna, there's the inside, it's nice and green. You know, if you get a nice storm that comes through, you're gonna have a lot of these on the ground. So it's a fun way to use the seeds for, you know, just things.
Stuff and things.
Stuff and things. That basically should be our jobs. Stuff and things.
We do lots of stuff and things.
Right. Stuff and things.
All right, so I think we're gonna wander up to the prairie to kind of finish. It'll be a full circle, all the habitats, because it's right next to a farm field.
Oh man. And so while we're walking there, so if you have comments or questions, feel free to send those to us or comment on the video. This is going to be posted on the Hudson Library's Facebook page. Ooh. As well as our, there we go. As well as our YouTube channel as well. So on YouTube, we are under Black Hawk County Conservation, and then the Hudson Library is obviously under the Hudson Library on Facebook. So this will be posted there. So please feel free, leave comments if you have questions and maps for this area and how to get to this area and other things can be found on our website, blackhawkcountyparks.com. And then you go on the left side, there's little tabs, and you hit parks, and then you look up Popp Wildlife Area. You click on that, and then it comes up with like a description of the area as well as a map that you can download too. So the map is fairly basic. Just a lot of our wildlife area maps are fairly basic, just because, you know, there's not, besides borders and things, and if it's hunting or not, you know.
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
You gotta see mushrooms on the way out.
Oh, sweet mushrooms. Good eye.
Mushroom eyeballs.
Katie with the big eyes.
Oh man, my nature eyes are ready to go today.
That's actually a fun, weird, well, not weird, but sometimes, you know, it's fun to do, you know, a lot of times we think about loops, like when we hike or want to go someplace. Well, I don't want to walk the same thing twice. Well, there's a lot of things you're gonna see if you walk the opposite direction. So Katie and I walked this direction and we didn't see it because it was on the other side of the tree. But now that we're walking back the same place or the same direction or the same path we took, you get to see all new things that maybe you didn't even notice before. So, not to mention other things that, you know, move, like birds and other things.
Or deer.
Yeah, that you might get to see that maybe you didn't the first time.
They're big mushrooms too.
Oh, they are. Oh, there
right
they are.
There.
Oh man. Sweet sweet mushrooms, man.
Sweet mushrooms.
Oh, look, the stick's like growing through it. Oh, that's cool.
Oh, sorry it's windy. There's a random stick in the way. I apologize.
Get up and then I'll get closer. I'm short.
Are those chickens or pheasants?
These are pheasants. So this is called a pheasant back. Oh, that is not good because it's all dark and stuff. But it's hard to see. Ooh, kind of. So this is a pheasant back. So they call it a pheasant back because it looks like the back of a pheasant. So like the feathers and stuff. On the back, the pattern, there's that stick that it kind of grew around, which is pretty cool. It's kind of rare to see that. They're also called dryad saddle. So a dryad is a fairy, another word for a fairy. So it kind of looks like the saddle a fairy would ride, like the size of a fairy would ride. So and it has that kind of brown kind of look like a saddle would. Yep. So it doesn't have gills on the bottom, it has pores. That's what I was trying to show, but frankly it's gonna be really hard because of the, you know, the woods. But these are, like I said, like Katie said earlier, pretty big. So these are edible. Pheasants are, I think, one of the best tasting mushrooms in the woods. This is pretty big though, and they're a little old. So this isn't something that you would harvest. You want something that's, I mean, the big ones, if you cut off kind of that woody outer part, it can be okay. But a lot of times if I find them this big, I just leave them. Because pheasants are not super rare. They're pretty easy to find. And they're, I would say maybe like the size you want to pick is probably the size of like a pot, like the diameter of a pop can up to maybe like a 2-liter bottle.
Yes.
And then like the diameter of it. And then beyond that, that's when you really have to, like, you end up scraping a lot or cutting a lot off because they just get really woody when they get bigger. So sorry, we had our little stick, but there we go. But yeah, so those are pheasant backs. Lots of edible mushrooms in Iowa besides morels. I think everybody loses their mind over morels, which, you know, they're good mushrooms, but there's a lot of edible mushrooms and a lot of good resources for finding them in Iowa. So especially now with all the pandemic stuff, there's been a lot of webinars about identifying wild mushrooms. So so yeah, so these are called pheasant backs or dryad saddle, and they grow on trees. I see them on trees mostly. Yeah, so this one's growing on a maple tree. So I'm gonna hand the camera back to Katie so I can get out of the tree. Good nature eyes, Katie.
Good nature eyes. Sometimes you just gotta, you know, like Katie said, walk the other way and also just kind of reset your eyeballs. That always seems to help me. Oh, this might be a better way up, huh?
Oh yeah.
Less nettles.
And one thing, human eyeballs are built to focus in on things because we're a predator. So thinking about that, you know, when you're going to look for things, you have to, like Katie said, you have to kind of reset your eyes. You know, you're not focusing or trying to find one little thing. There's a technique called scatter vision that you can look at online, and how to do that. We try to teach kids it, but it's hard
to explain.
Because we say, unfocus your eyes, and they look at us like we're crazy, and then they sit there and do this weird, awkward blinking at us. So,
oh, there's a lady? Can't tell.
We'll slowly creep.
Yeah, I think it's
a lady. Yeah, so that's a female red-winged blackbird, I think. She was singing her heart out, which most red-winged blackbirds do.
Especially the boys.
Yeah, oh man, and they can be a little aggressive too.
Especially right now, yes. I saw a couple the other day picking on a bald eagle, as they do.
They're the chihuahuas of the bird world.
They are. All right, so I think we're gonna finish up.
All right, we're back. We had to do a quick battery change. All right. Katie is walking in front of me. We are looking at the prairie here at Popp Access. So looks like on the edge of the timber and the farmland, they have planted prairie. So I can let her talk about what a prairie is.
Yeah, so Iowa used to be mostly tall grass prairie. So this, but with a lot more flowers, this is one that probably should be burned. It kind of needs to be restarted. So burning is supposed to naturally occur. So a lot of people, when they see, you know, folks like burning their ditches and stuff, or maybe just burning a prairie in general, they have lots of questions. Why are you doing that? Doesn't that disturb the plants? Well, it's good for the plants. It's also very windy, so I'm going to talk really loud. It's good for the plants. A lot of them need fire to kind of restart and grow. So that includes, like, if we, you know, recently the fires out in like California the past couple of years. The reason why those were so hot and so intense was because burning hadn't been done. So burning is naturally occurring in ecosystems to kind of have that start. It's called succession. So it starts from one point and ends up at another point, and once it hits the end, it restarts itself back over. Nature's kind of cool that way. So that's the reason why they were so intense, is because it hadn't been burned in so long. And then they also had lots of issues with diseases because fire wasn't happening. The same can kind of be applied out to here, just on a smaller scale. So Iowa used to look like this. Now we only have about 1%. Less than 1%. 0.1%. Right, of the natural, we call it the historical habitat left in Iowa. So basically 99% of the landscape you see now that's normal to us was not normal. That doesn't mean there wasn't woodland and stuff. There used to definitely be woodland, especially along like waterways. Mississippi had it, the Wapsie has it, little creeks like this have it too. That was common, but this was more common. Now we get a lot of this. So the reason why we have farmland now is because our soil is like A+ soil.
Thanks to
prairie, because the roots are so long, so it holds in all this moisture and nutrients and keeps it all nice and what's the word I want? Great, amazing.
There's a lot of organic material.
Yes,
so
organic.
Think of, like, you know, when something dies, it turns back into soil. That's what we say, right? Well, imagine all of these roots turning back into soil.
And I mean, like long, not like, so if you were to look at like corn roots, they're probably like this, and I would say prairie root. So I'm the root of the prairie, my whole body, or even longer. And
I think the tallest one is what, 8 feet maybe?
Bluegrass maybe?
It's like 8 or 10 feet. That's
right.
The roots,
That's
just the roots. That's what, like, all that really tall, well, a good chunk of the tall stuff, actually that chunk, you know, that one right there. Like, isn't that insane? I mean, you know, you look at like Katie, you're what, 5'7", yeah, and you know, 8 feet, folks. Like, that's taller than the tallest person you know by a lot.
Who of me?
I mean, that's just nuts. It's so even hard to fathom, you know?
Right. So that's why a lot of farmers now, so you see this farm out here, so these roots here are probably benefiting this farmland, especially on this side, in some way. And that's why farmers also rotate crops too. So they're not gonna always do corn every single year. They'll rotate between corn and soybeans. And a lot of them now are putting areas, so let's say they have an area that gets wet, and we are definitely getting wetter as the years go on. They'll put that in the CRP, which kind of helps with pollinators and you know, if they're really into hunting, so deer and pheasant too. So they'll plant things like prairie in these little plots instead of planting corn, and then they still get paid too to do that. So it works out for both sides.
I think CRP is technically Conservation Reserve Program,
yes,
is what it stands
long
for.
Program.
And there's also like areas like that are really wet, like in like wetland type. They have what's called WRP, which is a Wetland Reserve Program. So it functions the same way.
So it'll be the same thing.
So so that way the land can still be at least somewhat make money for the people that own it,
Yep.
but still put it back into native habitat.
Yeah, and it's a lot more common now, and farmers have been super helpful with working with that too, including like the side of the roads too, like not mowing as often or planting things on the side of the road, because they see the benefits and how it helps them and also their crops too, because this obviously is very important, not just to Iowa, but for the entire world basically.
Yeah.
It was incredibly important in ag. So yeah, this is a prairie. It's not the greatest prairie, but it's better than none. So we like a prairie. And again, this is home to lots and lots of insects. Reptiles, amphibians really like prairies too, because there's lots of tall grass to hide in. Small mammals, so like your shrews and your mice and stuff. Deer kind of, sort of, they like to munch on the grass. And then of course the big one that we no longer have here that roams freely was the bison. So imagine giant bison in this for like miles and miles. It'd be way cool. Way cool. And we have those if you want to see bison up close down at Hickory Hills in LaPorte City. And there's babies right now. So that's extra
baby
exciting.
time.
Yes, there's
Baby
so
cinnamons.
baby cinnamons. They're very cute.
One thing I wanted to point out in this area, we get a lot of questions about it, and actually I see a lot of questions online about it too. So I'm gonna highlight, like, we're not gonna talk about like every species in here because there's a lot, but this one species. So you probably have seen the yellow flowers on the side of the road ditches in like maybe late June, July time, but right now it's May and early June. So the flowers you're seeing here are actually a different plant than what you see in the ditches in June and or late June and July. So the stuff you're seeing in the ditches are gonna be wild parsnip, which is an invasive plant that is really bad for your skin.
UV reactant.
Yeah, so the sap, when it gets on your skin, reacts with the UV rays from the sun.
Yes.
And causes blisters and boils on your skin. Nasty, nasty stuff to get into. However, you know, we get a lot of questions like, oh, I've already seen wild parsnip up. And well, actually, they are not seeing wild parsnip. They are seeing a native prairie plant. So this is also yellow, and it has, oh, the wind. It has, see this under, it kind of has the same flower shape as like Queen Anne's lace. So this is called Golden Alexander, native prairie plant. So then the question is, well, wait, besides the time of the year, how do you tell the plant apart? So the big thing are gonna be the leaves. So the leaves of Golden Alexander are smaller. So if you look at it closely, you can see like how big my finger is next to it. This piece of grass, man. Okay. Whereas a wild parsnip leaf is going to be like as big as my hand. And they're not individual leaves like these are. They're all like connected into a big leaf. So not only time of year, but also the leaves look really different on them as well. These guys, native prairie plants, a beautiful plant, and in some areas can be quite rare too. So, and important species for pollinators, because this umbel flower head shape at the top is really important for certain pollinators that don't have, say, like long beaks or proboscis or things that can go inside. So think like flies and you know, beetles and things like that. This is really important for them for pollination purposes. So I just want to point that out because I know that I always have my eye when we take kids places and even members of the public, because wild parsnip is nasty, and it can affect you even if you get it 1 year, it can affect you for 3 to 5 years after that. It can cause scarring. It's bad stuff. So, but this time of year, late May, early June, and actually Golden Alexander's been blooming now for probably close to a month maybe. So,
and parsnip, I've never really seen it in prairies. It's usually on the roadsides.
yeah, they love edges.
Yeah, on the edges of it.
Yeah.
So if it was to be somewhere, unfortunately for this guy, it might get mistaken because it's on the edge, but they're never really in the middle. It's
like,
a rare time when they'd be in the middle.
It's kind of hard to see, but actually I can see a couple right now, like further in, you know, and they get really big.
Yeah, they're much taller. Their stalk is thicker.
Yeah.
They're not, I mean, I've gotten parsnip and I had pants on. So it was not a fun time, and it lasted for a few months where I had like a scar from a, from a sweet blister.
Yeah, they are just nasty to get into. So be aware, keep that in mind when you're going to wild places, because remember folks, like there's no trails, but that also means there's not a ranger or staff that is keeping this area every day or every other day or once a week that's coming through.
Monarch
butterfly. Oh man, that's like my second one of the season.
We're easily distracted.
We are. So keep that in mind when you're going to wild places. Like, these areas are not meant to be developed. They're meant to be for the animals and left alone to some degree. So.
I think there's she's flying around.
It's probably hard to see on the video, but she's further in.
Back there.
So when you come to places, things like poison ivy and parsnip, these things we just got to be aware of, and thistles, because it's not going to be mowed and things like that, like a typical campground park or a developed park. Yeah. So, all right. Well, on this note, Katie and I are going to say goodbye. Goodbye. We wish we'd been able to do this with you.
Wish this was in person.
But we wanted to do it here at Popp Access because we wanted it to be somewhere that you could go, especially in Hudson. Like, you're so close to Popp Access, and it's such a beautiful place. So we wanted to encourage you, get out in your backyards, get out into your local places. You don't have to drive 30 minutes to find all this. Yep. And actually, if you are interested in other wild places that are a little bit more off the grid, again, check out that blackhawkcountyparks.com. Under the parks, we list all of our wildlife areas. All of our areas that are open to the public are listed on there, and they have directions and maps, so you can get out. And they even have kind of usually a little description, like great for turkey hunting or something like that. So yeah, we encourage you. Sometimes some of the best days we have with kids are days that we don't plan, and it's just an exploration, and getting to learn alongside kids is, I think, one of the best parts of our job.
Yes.
I know Katie and I were forever learning, and we're always, getting out, exploring new things, because sometimes the unknown can be a little scary, but we're really fortunate in Iowa because getting lost, well, you're gonna hit a road. Yep. And a cell phone, with the exception of a few places in Iowa, you can pretty much get cell service in most places. So
looking at you, Western Iowa.
Right, and Northeast Iowa.
Northeast Iowa.
So we are fortunate. So get out, explore those wild places. There's such, cool, unexpected things to find and experience just that firsthand. Because frankly, there's a lot to learn, a lot to know out here. I know Katie and I definitely don't know all the things. So we're forever learning. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for enjoying your wild areas. Thanks for supporting conservation and what we do here in Iowa. And happy summer. I know everybody's kind of ready for summer. So get outside, enjoy this warm weather. I just keep remembering those snowy days in January, right. Yes, when all we wanted was sunlight and warmth. So get outside, enjoy the vitamin D. Happy summer. Happy reading, library week. We talk about, fairy, a lot of times I think this year it's fairy tales and legends and kind of the fantasy world. I mean, you got it, folks. I mean, you think of Narnia and Wild, Witch in the Wardrobe. I mean, they were based on actual places, some of those things. Yep. So go out, explore your Narnia, explore your wild and your places, your fantastical places that we have right here in Iowa. So have a great summer.
Bye.